Right, so today is asynchronous code. I doubt you've had to deal with much of it so far, but once you start to work with APIs and making HTTP calls, then you want to worry about this stuff here. So we're going to talk about synchronous code and blocking, which is what you should already be used to. Then asynchronous code, then promises the fetch API, which you might have used before at some point in one of the projects, and then Async Await. A few things you need to know. So multi-core processors can do multiple things at once, so that's most devices you'll use today, but JavaScript cannot. So as you know, it will read the lines in your file, line by line, top to bottom, and then execute it. But if you have like some intensive code, like a long while loop or something like that, it will stop anything else from happening. Yeah, so like a while loop is, well, this might run forever if it's well true, but that would block any code after this from running until this is finished, if it ever finishes. But I guess sometimes you want this behavior because you want to read a file, so you want to read a file in its entirety. So you have this file.json, which has like it's like maybe a gigabyte in size, and JavaScript has to read every line in there. Then you wouldn't really want that to. Sorry?
Can you go back? I mean, what behavior are we talking about? If we go back to the previous slide, the one slide before even.
This is just while loops are just an example of synchronous or blocking code. So like if you had code above this while loop and code below this while loop, JavaScript would run the code top to bottom. When it gets to this while loop, it will be stuck doing something here.
Right.
And only when, let's say, whatever is in here, unfortunately this is true, so it should run forever. But if it was checking against a number you were counting down or something like that, then once that's finished, then it would be able to execute the code after it. But as it's like this, it wouldn't get executed. So it's just an example of synchronous code.
Okay, so what we're saying is synchronous code means whenever there's a loop or whatever, like for example this while loop, it will do something that is in the while loop, whereas asynchronous, it means that it will continue and do multiple things at the same time. Is that right?
Haven't gotten the full explanation yet, but you have a good good enough idea of what generally we want to do for using asynchronous code, but it's a bit slightly different. So you see the difference when we get to the examples, I guess.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right. So yeah, so this would be another example of synchronous code. This is like some Node.js code, so it's using FS to read a file, a JSON file. So synchronous code is basically everything you've been doing so far. So like if we run this, it should run in that order from top to bottom. So first, second, third, fourth. If I move this up, then second should probably, it should run first, right? And if we have a while loop here on this list of strings here, and we're saying while list.length is more than 0, then we're gonna do list.pop, which is just removing the last element from the array. So when the first time it runs, it will remove doing, and then I, and then and then 1, so on and so forth. And then we're also console logging the entire list. So if I let that run, sorry, then yeah, first, second, and then everything that's being done in that while loop, and then the third and fourth. So imagine if this list was really long, then it'll take a long time to get to your third and fourth action. So it's synchronous code is what you've been writing so far, basically. Well, mostly. Just run line by line.
Yep, got it.
Yep, got it. Okay, so asynchronous code. So if you've used set timeout or set interval, those are some simple examples of asynchronous code. So set timeout executes a particular block of code once after specified time has elapsed. It takes the following parameters. So you have the globally available set timeout function here. So that, and it's passed two things. It's passed the callback function, which is this anonymous arrow function here, and it's just console logging hello Mr. Universe, and it's doing that. It's going to do that after waiting for 2000 milliseconds. So I think it showed that before, but I'll still write another example. And then this is a set interval example. So you have a counter set to 0, and then you have the set interval keyword here, globally available, just like set timeout. Pass it the callback function, which is this anonymous arrow function that increases the counter by 1, and then logs the amount of seconds from the last pass, basically. So it will say 1 second from the beginning for the first, after the first second. So it does this every 1 or 1000 milliseconds, which is a second. So those are asynchronous, mainly because they're low priority. Okay, but how to stop it? Yeah, so we have clear interval. That's another.
When you say they're low priority,
yeah, so
they have like a priority that is defined by the time you set. So
yeah, it's determined by JavaScript. I only mentioned it because it's useful to know, but you don't have to remember which ones are low priority and high priority. You just need to remember that they're asynchronous. So
but what does it mean, the low priority versus high priority?
Okay, well, when I get to the examples, but basically, we have our synchronous code, so it runs line by line, and now with the asynchronous code, so if we had, actually, I should be able to show you an example now.
Okay, so you mean priority versus non-priority is kind of the same way to say synchronous versus asynchronous?
I'm mainly talking about the asynchronous, so yeah, so let's say we put this set timeout here, and we tell it to call to console log call back after 2 seconds, then it should be the last thing that's called here. So if we do node index, right, so it's still running. So you have first, second, the list printed out, third and fourth, and then the callback.
Got it. Okay, now I understand. Okay.
And one way to really see the difference is if I remove this and I do 0 milliseconds. Even though this is still, fairly, it's before console log third and fourth. It should probably still run after, yes. So it's still called last here, even though it's supposed to be called after a certain time, which is 0 seconds.
Somewhere that set timeout, the minimum is 10 milliseconds. Is that right, or something like that?
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
But basically, if you put less than 10, it will be 10. So I think I read that somewhere.
Okay. Fair enough. I didn't know about that, but I'll check on that. But either way, JavaScript, when it's reading its file, it's going to look at this synchronous code and go, okay, well, let's run that right away. So let's run all of this. Then if it gets a set timeout, it realizes it's async, or it doesn't need to be run right away. So it puts it in another queue and runs everything else that can be run. And then when it has the time, or this is ready, it would execute that function or command or line.
Cool, thank you.
No problem. Okay, let's build a stopwatch. I should copy this. Or maybe I don't need to code it. Let's just talk through it. Let counter equals to 10. Set. We have a timer, a const timer, which is a set. It's used in set interval, and it will log the time it's at. It will decrease the counter, and then when it gets to 0, it will say stop, and then clear that interval. And it does this interval every 1,000 seconds, 1,000 milliseconds, sorry. So I believe events are also like low priority. They're given to the browser to execute. So JavaScript gives looking for it. Remember, we would look for the DOM element and then add the event listener. So these are just some other examples of using of what will happen. I'm distracted by this anonymous. That's not how you spell anonymous. Okay, yeah, so I already gave you an example with async. And I'll provide the code afterwards. I'm sure you'll have some examples on this. Okay, so now we get to promises, but any questions about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous code? Basically, the synchronous code is code that can be executed line by line, and then the asynchronous code is the stuff that it needs to do something for maybe an interval or after a certain time, or it needs to get data from somewhere else, and you might not know how long that's going to take, so you want to do something else in the meantime, and therefore you write the asynchronous code. And you see some examples with promises, but any questions about the differences?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'll let you read this, and then I'll give a summary.
Yep.
Okay, so it's promises are, I see them as like safe code. Like I mentioned, you might want to call an API or get data from a database somewhere. You might want to load certain things in order, or let something else handle another execution while you do something that's more important. But you don't want to have to worry about the exact time it has to come back. You know it's supposed to let you know whether it's going to fail, whether it's failed or whether it's still happening or whether it's successful. And then you just want JavaScript to be able to do something when it gets any of those states. So if it's finished executing what it needs to do, and you want to do something else after success, then you just want it to do that. If it fails, then you want to show some kind of error, something like that. Right. Yeah, so this is the basic structure. So it's the syntax is you end up doing something what's called chaining. So your async operation and then in params, so that would execute, and then whenever that either fails, which would go to the catch, but I'll come back to that, or when it's successful, you would then chain into the .then. So then you can take whatever is returned from there and do something with the result. But if it fails, then you want to handle the error in here. So you may get a message, whether that's something that you've created yourself, or if you're calling an external API, then the API might send back an error message that you can handle. Right, so promises. This was another example of a fetch. So so when you want to do it like this, as you can see, you have it takes an executor. It takes two parameters. It takes an executor, which is what happens when it actually is successful, or maybe might not be successful, but it actually resolves, and a rejection. So what happens when it doesn't work out? So new promise. Then if we say then rejector, we can say oh wait, no, I can't use fetch in here. I need to use this in a browser, don't I? Okay, so like I said, let's do fetch. You guys have used fetch before in new projects, right? I didn't confirm that, but did you?
I don't think I have used fetch before.
Okay.
Or maybe, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Ah, Ricardo's saying no, we haven't.
Okay, well, sorry, I was trying to show that fetch is I nearly had a promise, but you can see that we're actually, and then, well, let me just zoom in. You can see that you can get a promise object, and here it is being rejected. So what we would then, what we can then do, which is good, is do dot catch, and then we can do whatever we want for that error. I'm just gonna console.log failed, maybe. Right. So here, yeah, fulfilled. Promise state fulfilled. And as mentioned in the slides, it's an object. So here's the dot then that would allow you to change stuff, and the dot catch. So the dot catch will be fired when I get an error here like fail to fetch. And if I actually got that data, then I would be able to console log it out to wherever, or use it in the use case that I need it for. any questions about the syntax and basic structure?
So in your example, I didn't quite understand what happened. Is it because there is no such thing as CEO dog thing, or?
This exists. I guess I'm just not able to fetch from the browser, because I'm sure if I take this link and paste it in my.
So what did you get? You get an error message. What happened?
So, sorry. Yeah, it's giving me a type error.
And you created that type error as an error response to your function, or?
So I created this as an error, as a response if it fails. So it says failed here. So let me run through it.
Failed to fetch. Is that what you?
Yeah, I could put failed to get data if I wanted to. So basically, I call this API link, and then
I think we can't see the bottom of your page. That's why. Oh, maybe it's me actually. Sorry.
Can you see this line now? Fetch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we fetch that URL, the browser goes off and does what it needs to do to call that endpoint, and then whatever it comes back with, it either follows the chain of .then, in which case taking that response data and then calling the .json function on it to format it for me, and then I was going to console log that data. However, since it fails, it skips these .thens and then goes to catch. And then for catch, I just have a function saying fail to get data, which happens here.
Got it.
So that saves you from, like, if you wanted the data and you just made the call for the data, but you don't know what happens with it, then what do you do? In this case, you can use this syntax to catch those errors and do something useful, like send a message, or maybe ask the user to try again, or something like that. Yeah, so fetch API. Right, JavaScript can send network requests to the server and load new information whenever it's needed. The fetch API provides a JavaScript interface for accessing and manipulating parts of the HTTP pipeline, such as requests and responses. It also provides a global fetch method that provides an easy logical way to fetch resources asynchronously across the network. Yeah, so basically, pretty much this, or besides URL, same thing I've been trying to do. So yeah, as I said, it's a promise, and then you can chain with then, and if you wanted to catch the error here, you would place the .catch after this bottom bracket here. Right, so the default fetch.
And so the then part.
Yeah.
It's always the case that we get the JSON file for the response.
So well, generally when we're dealing with the APIs, we would get back a a JSON response. So then we need to call JSON on it to format it for us. Yeah, so it could depend on the API, but generally, I'm sure in most cases you'll be working with JSON data. Yeah, so these are a full list of HTTP methods. I don't know if you've seen them before, but when you go to a website, you're making a GET request to that URL. When you post a tweet on Twitter, that's a post method that's being used that goes to Twitter's API to get your tweet on the timeline. Put and patch are pretty or similar. They're for updating the item. So if you were working with a to-do list and you did a put or patch, you'd be updating that to-do list text or something. And then there's head and delete options, connect, trace. We probably mostly use these ones: get, post, put, delete, and patch. Which is basic CRUD. You should have done some of it in the projects, but you'll get to use it more from now on. Right, so you'll also get some response headers from the response. So this example here, I guess, is just iterating through those headers. So we can do this and see what it gives us. Start with a URL. Nope. So I'm going to just try using this one. Did I just delete something? Yes. Same problem. Okay, I'm just going to go to this example I was trying to code up for you guys and just paste this code here. I'll go through the rest of the code later. Right, so the headers we can get are cast control, and the value for that is max age 1800. Content type application JSON. Let me see what.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just following the example of their explaining what response headers you can get. It's not useful information right now because you really just want to care about what you do with the data, but let's cross log the response and see what's in the response.
Right, okay, so it gives you an object with lots of different data points.
Yeah, so you kept back the URL you used, the headers, this is the JSON function, etc., and a status here, which is important. HTTP caps, I think, is, or dogs, either way. So these are some of the statuses you can get when you make a call to an API. So like the general one is a 200. So you get that when everything is fine, your page is loaded, or you've gotten all the data. A 201 if you just added a new to-do list, something like that. I'm sure you've seen 401 unauthorized or 404 not found. So then within your see, when you handle the success, then if you wanted to do something based on the status, if it was a 201 now successfully created, then you could send a message, log a message saying, or return a message saying the item was successfully created to the user. But if it fails, then of course you would do .catch so let's say I messed that up. Yeah, so status 404. So it did resolve, and I just logged the response. Let's see if I mess this up a little more, or maybe it just handles all that. Interesting. Okay. Okay. I need to get an error, but this is not going to work right now. Okay. It's just an example of showing what you can do with the data after you've gotten it, basically. In my
yeah, okay.
Yes, not that important, but you'll be able to.
So basically, the for let key value is basically saying, okay, we're going into the array of headers within the response object.
Yeah.
And getting the key and value when console logging it. Got it.
Yeah, just doing something with it. Sorry.
Yeah. That sounds. I was not aware. I didn't see the kind of headers part of it. Now that you showed the object, I understand it.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Okay, so we've done fetch. So async await is another way to handle promises, or to write them rather, which might be easier to, or at least is a bit nicer to read. Yeah, so a special syntax to work with promises in a more comfortable fashion. So to use await, your function should be async, right? So example, right? This is the good example. So const name of the function, and then instead of just the braces and then the arrow, you put async in front of it. And so this function becomes asynchronous, and then anything that you need to wait on, you use the await keyword in front of it. So here we have the async function, and inside this async function, we're saying const response equals await this promise, which is fetching that URL. So what it would do is pause there until that's done. When that's done, then it will then be able to continue with this line of code. So then response should have something in it by the time that's done, and then you can do response.json. Then you can return the data.
And so if you hadn't put the async, it wouldn't work. The first part.
No, it wouldn't work. The JavaScript compiler should show an error, I believe, but we can go through it and try.
So it's the combination of async and await that work together.
Yeah.
Cool.
So same as a promise, but it does the same as a promise, but instead of chaining, you use async and then await, and you can think you can use await again. So if you want it, if for whatever reason this method that was called on it, or whatever method you might want to use after this, or maybe you wanted to call another URL, then you could use another await. Let's say you were, which is in the example that I want to try to finish for you today. So, but let's say you wanted to load some profiles, and you wanted to give them some random images for those profiles, or the user info that you're getting. So you're hitting the endpoint. It has a list of 10 users, and these 10 users have a name, an age, or what they do, some other information, and a key called picture number, I say, and that's an ID relating to an image that is in another database, because sometimes this happens when we're going for efficiency in APIs. So like we would have the URLs for the images in some other database, or at least another table, and then perhaps it would have its own separate API call. So we make this call for the info for the users, the 10 users, and we want to also make a call for the images, so that we have all those URL images that we could then filter through to match with the ID that we get from the user. So in this case, we don't actually want to start trying to load that image for the user unless we have the URLs, right? So in that case, we would want to fetch for those images first, those URLs first. They would have the ID and the image URL as an object. So it'd be an array of objects, say, with the ID and the image URL. We get those, and then once we have those, then we can make another call to the list of users so that then we can load the page properly with the correct images for those users. Did I ramble too much, or did that sound like a sensible thing to do?
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is what I was trying to do for this example. You guys can help by coding along with me if you want. But the lessons have been too short apparently, so I'm going to just finish out this example. Feel free to ask any questions or help me out. Let me explain what I'm trying to do. Well, basically same thing I just mentioned, but I'm just gonna get random dog images, or if the person selects a dog breed, then I want to get those images, or get a random image first, and then add it to the HTML with the info. But I also want to generate a random username, so I need an API for that, but I haven't gone to there yet. So let's see. So I've made a constant for the base URL, and I've made two other URLs. So I have this random one to get a random dog image, and then this one here that I was using before to get the list of all the dog breeds. So this is this dog API. So this call here should return this JSON here. It's an object with a message key with the list of the breeds, and the main breed is the key, and then you have an array to every key of the subbreeds. So Australian Shepherd, English Bulldog, French Bulldog, etc., etc. I'm only going to deal with the breeds today. You guys can take this code and change it up to include all the subbreeds if you want. Have a little template to use that I just guessworking what I'm gonna do with the info that I get from the API. So I'm separating it out into get dog breed. So not value. Our new dog, which is not finished yet, I'm going to be getting all the info and then passing it to the dog template function and then appending that to the DOM. I have this get dog breed function, which is going to get the value from the select here. Just in case. I also have this, which is getting the list of the breeds. So I get the select. This is the HTML here. Just select here the button, then a row. This is just HTML that I had copied from somewhere. So what it's doing is it's doing a fetch. It's running .json on that response. So yeah, the fetch is going to dog breeds URL, which is what I've listed up here. And then I'm running object.keys on data.message. So remember this call is going to give me back a message key and I think a status of success, which I'm not going to use. So data.message would give me all of these keys, so it should give me all of the breed names. And then for each breed name, I'm creating an option element. I'm setting the value to the breed, and then I'm just doing some fancy replace to the first letter in the name to uppercase, and then appending that option to the row. So just have this set time. Let's do it 1 second. So this should load when this should fire when the page loads, and yeah, see, I have a list of all the dogs from the API here. Although it looks like I have a bit of work to do with the actual names like Mexican hairless and German Shepherd, but it's fine. So the behavior I want is that if I hit Akita, then if I hit add dog, then I want to display a dog here, but I also want to give it a name. So let's see. Feel free to ask about anything you've seen here, or you can get involved if you want and add a suggestion. Build an example and show you the use cases where using promises and fetch and async are important. So for example, when I ran into the first issue where if we add a dog, we have this.
Okay, so you're adding a title,
yeah,
and a name to it.
Yeah, let me look at the.
And why is the image not showing? Is it like normal? Oh.
Yeah, it's not showing because right now I'm injecting a promise there. Well, an unresolved promise, a promise object there.
Okay.
So at first I didn't have any async await in this or try catch. So I didn't I literally don't know when I'm going to get a URL or not. So that's one place where there's one example where careful use of this is because I mean if I hopefully let me try just doing this and see if I actually get an image. No. All of my demos failed. So if I this URL and I put that where, you know what, okay, well, let's put it here. Okay, so right, this is the dog template, so this is all the markup for this card here. So what I was trying to do is have the dog's random name, which I put to do there to do, what breed it is, so I should be getting that from info.breed, and the image, which should end up being a URL from here, but as you've seen so far, it has just ended up being a promise object, which means everything it needed to do hasn't been done yet to get me back the image. But now that I put the actual URL for an image here, it loads up. So what I could do, well, sorry, does that make it any clearer? What I'm doing is just an example, so you can see why asynchronous code is important. Because so far I've been running into all the issues you could have with it. Well, with not using it. No? Yeah? Clear?
Everyone was a little bit confused about that.
Oh, okay. What about async and await? Does it make sense from the slides? You just have async. You prefix your function with async, and then you have await inside. This next line wouldn't execute until what's after this await on this line does.
I believe we need to try work with this, and after that we can answer, because I believe now it's really hard to understand.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it's definitely maybe some guided examples from the work would be better, but
I think I understand almost information what you give for us. I believe other the same. But again, I think we need to try to work with this, and after that we can have some result.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like everything.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely probably agree with that 100%, because I can't just watch a tutorial or someone teach me something and then be able to use it. I actually have to either code along or try to use it in some way. I guess sometimes watching someone else doing it isn't enough either, but I hope I at least got across the use cases to you. Like you were seeing me not being able to get the image or it appearing late, because that's a task that needs more time to be done. So you'd want to use an async or await function to handle that while the rest of the code can run. So maybe.
So did the image not come because it didn't come on time, or?
Yeah, so somewhere in here I'm not handling getting the image properly. So I mean, I wanted to console.log stuff, but I'm not even getting that to work. It's probably, my problem is probably that I'm using Code Sandbox and not VS Code and a live server. But basically, so when you go to a URL, when you use that, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, we can see message status success.
Yeah, so this is from the same breeds the random dog image URL. So the dog.co.api breeds image random. So hitting that and doing a get request to that will give me this response. So it should be just the object with the message with the URL and a status success. So in my code, I'm fetching that and doing response.json. Oh,
okay, so you're fetching it.
Yep. And then because I just want the URL, I should be getting that from data.message.
Attends, il a vraiment.
Right, so let me find. Right, so promise pending. Let's add another await here. See if that makes a difference. Okay, great. That makes a bit of a difference. And if we add another await, doesn't get to the HTML, but let's try making our new dog async. So we did async before the anonymous function here, and then we say await get dog image. There we go. Did you guys follow that?
Yeah. So basically, you're making getting the image an asynchronous function, or an asynchronous, I don't know how you call it, getting the image.
Yeah.
And basically that allows the image to be fetched as you're waiting for it to come.
Yeah, and then I can safely load this HTML onto the page with the right image and everything else.
But why didn't it work when you because you did it just at the get dog image stage, which should be enough, shouldn't it? Why do you have to do it both at get.image, so with line 38 and also on line 21?
So I guess how to think about it is that although this function is itself asynchronous, what's inside here, what it returns and everything, it still needs to make sure that it does everything here before it actually does this task, right? Which is, getting the dog image, the dog breed, supposed to get a name, and then adding it to the template. So it can do all of this without waiting, right? So you can do everything in here.
Right, so if you do that, you will have everything but the image, okay?
Yeah. But now that I'm making sure that I wait until I get that image before I actually render anything. So can I get something specific? I should know what a bulldog looks like. I guess that's supposed to be a bulldog. Let's try another bulldog. And another. Not sure if those are bulldogs.
Yeah.
Pit bull. Don't think that's a pit bull.
Weird pit bull.
That's definitely not a pit bull. So yeah, there's stuff to work on.
But we get the idea, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. Get dog image isn't passing anything. So if I were to put get dog breed in here, then once it's random, it should be random. But if I want a bulldog,
there you go.
Yay. If I want another bulldog, yay. Another bulldog. See, okay, well, it's painful at first because I wasn't thinking straight, obviously, but there we go. Async, await, fetching, waiting until everything is done until you are ready to do something. So you can see how useful it is, right?
Yeah.
In some cases, you might have API calls that take really long, like 10 seconds or something like that. And what most websites will try to do is present the user with some kind of loading animation or something like that while they do this stuff in background. So if you want, you could take this code and update it to get a random name from some other random API. So I think I can get names from here, I believe. Yeah, so you can get users. You can make a random call to, you can make a call to users and just get a random name, or you can just make a function to make up a random name, and maybe put a set timeout on it if you want to simulate the load time, and then basically await that function to finish, and also maybe show some kind of loading animation or some text. It could be just loading ... to say that it's doing something, it's working, and then when it's finished, it should disappear and then show the list of the dogs. Does that sound like a good enough challenge to learn how it works?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Any more questions?
No, I'm fine.
Not for me either. Thank you.
Is Ricardo okay? Okay.
I think he was on and off. I think he has some internet issues.
Okay. All right, well, I guess that's it for today.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.